So, in light of another mass tragedy, although I didn't want to talk about the tragedy itself, I'm now going to be talking about some stupid shit the feminists put out because they just had the opportunity to, because yet another male shot up and killed people. And then there was another shooting today where a teacher decided to go and shoot people. So, for the Republican idea that arming our teachers is a very good idea, I offer a dissenting opinion. Have you not seen those videos where the kids go up to the teacher and just start throwing shit around and disrespecting the teacher? And the teacher has no recourse, mind you. They can't do anything about it. So they're kind of stuck in the middle. Yeah, it never happens, right? So let's give a teacher a gun. That's a whole new level of going postal. Just a great idea. But that's not what I want to address. I want to address the feminist trope that has been turned into a stupid piece of shit commentary that I've seen on Fox and Friends coming out of a clinical what was she? She was a psychotherapist, somebody that deals with crazy people essentially, and a couple other feminist dipshits, feminist frequency, said something. Of course they did. But here's a woman in Huffington Post that decided to say something too. And since it's been all over the media and people want to talk about it like it's a thing that exists, even though it's never been tested, proven to exist, and is a term that demonizes men in general. Yeah, let's point at men, blame them for the problem, notice that there is an issue there, and then do nothing about it except for demonize men. That's a great solution, don't you think? As if the reckless abandon of ripping male figures out of kids' houses and making it so it's single moms that are the only way to go when it comes to raising their kids. Yeah, since you guys decided to wreck the homes and say it's irresponsible to have children and all that shit, why don't you leave human development alone and out of your little theories of bullshit? That's where I would start. But let's get into this article because I thought it was really particularly annoying because it uses social media as evidence to prove its case. Yeah. So a comedian of Michael Ian Black thinks that we should focus on gender roles in the wake of Wednesday's mass shooting. Does he really? That sounds like a great idea since you put gun violence and toxic masculinity saying that they're linked in 8 tweets. When toxic masculinity, by the way, was a dipshit in the 70s that thought that it was a really cool idea to say that, you know what, all these prisoners here that pretty much are kind of aggressive and violent and, well, they don't like my therapy. They should just open their feelings. As you have a feminist trying to talk to a bunch of prison inmates. They're there for murder and rape and arson. Yeah, that's going to go over well. But no. Let's. They're all really toxic. This is a toxic environment, and you know what? Toxic masculinity might be applicable to the outside world, even though you're talking about 2% of a population in a biased sample. Let's get into it, shall we? Comedian Michael Ian Black believes boys are broken, and he makes a good point. Yes, they are. Where's their dad? You guys want to make that single mom welfare housing go so well. Where's the male figure in their life? In the wake of the mass shooting on Wednesday, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is where it was at, in South Florida. Black made a poignant observation that connected the dots between Americans' gun violence epidemic and toxic masculinity. Oh, did he? Let's find out what he said. So, let's go right here. I'm not going to listen to your quotes. I'm going to actually read the tweets since you provided them. Thanks a lot. Deeper even than the gun problem is this. Boys are broken. Until we fix men, we need to fix the gun problem. Yeah, I can agree with that. Because you're going to have to undo 40 years of feminist theory and rhetoric and bullshit in our society that has completely destroyed the household, completely destroyed all reason and thought, has infected all of psychology and sociology to say that the gold standard of human behavior is feminine behavior. Yeah, you're going to have to undo that and realize that men are different and you have to approach them differently. As gun violence becomes more and more common in the United States, there seems to be one constant. The majority of shooters are men, many of whom have a track record of physically abusing women in their lives. Black noted that strict gender roles are quite literally killing people. Really? So you go and start a term called toxic masculinity, which is a direct term that is basically demeaning to all men, saying that this thing exists when it originally came out of the prison system from a therapist that couldn't get inmates to talk to him because he was probably a pansy and nobody trusted his ass anyways. But no, no. Yeah, it's definitely a track record of physically abusing women too. Domestic violence is actually directly related, but it's not the perpetrator abusing women necessarily. It could be the other way around. They do know that there's domestic violence there. And with our domestic violence laws, just a little clue on this, something that I quite know a lot about. The men are always guilty. Period. I got stabbed by my ex. Guess who got in trouble? Wasn't her. So here's the full thread. I thought I'd read his tweets because he actually does make some good points, but this feminist decides to blur the lines and put their feminist ideology all over this shit. The last 50 years redefined womanhood. Women are taught they can be anything, no commensurate movement for men who are still generally locked into the same rigid, outdated model of masculinity, and it's killing us. No, actually, that's not what has happened. They have redefined masculinity to be something that is abhorrent. You guys don't seem to get this. That the normal behaviors that men have, the stuff that has been a part of our genetic makeup, if you will, our base level instincts as a man, our base level intuitions, however you want to put it, our unconscious bias, you want to roll with that stupid phrase, they have been demonized over the last 50 years. It's not that we're stuck in the same rigid binary norms of your feminist ideology, is that feminism has corrupted the study of behavior and said the only right behavior is feminine behavior and all masculine behavior is toxic. Anything that can be perceived as male behavior is a toxic behavior. Assertiveness, aggressiveness, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, it's toxic. It's bad. Yeah, sure it is. That's why 50 Shades of Grey is the top-selling book for women, right? Because, yeah. If you want to hurt a man, the first thing you do is attack his masculinity. Men don't have the language to understand masculinity as anything other than some version of a caveman because no language exists. That is absolutely not fucking true. The only place I could think of that you would get some idea like this from is feminism. Because any male behavior, this traditionally a male behavior, is archaic and must be stomped out. You need to change this behavior. Yeah, no significant role models in today's industry, or today in general, because y'all a bunch of fucking pussies. How is that not any more evident? There's a reason why the two biggest sports, well, I guess three biggest sports, football, UFC, and, well, kind of a sport, WWF, WWE, whatever you want to call it, the Wrestling Federation, are mostly populated with males. Why do you think that is? I mean, it's a very aggressive sport. There's a lot of aggression in it. There's a lot of, UFC straight up fighting. Boxing is also a popular thing, all male. Well, like 80-90% male, rather. Why do you think that is? But here you have some jackass telling us that that's caveman and archaic and rigid, and it's just bad. We need to adjust men to be more up to date, modern. Yeah. In other words, be more like women. not recognize the sex differences, but say that it's all fluid and open and blank slate, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And it's just we can mold them to be like this. Yeah, it's been working out very well in the last 50 years, right? Because the rise of mass shootings has increased. The more this shit's been put out, there is a correlation, and it's not to toxic masculinity, if anybody bothered to pay attention. Continuing on, the language of masculinity is hopelessly entwined with sexuality. And the language of sexuality is hopelessly entwined with power, agency, and self-worth. No, no, no. Sexuality has nothing to do with masculinity. Confidence, assertiveness, those type of things are masculine behaviors. But then when you demonize men in the same frickin' tweet, the language of sexuality is hopelessly entwined with the power, agency, and self-worth. So you're confusing, as Jordan Peterson puts it, competence with tyranny. Power is in domination is what you're referring to. Power is in competence, being overly competent of your abilities, being assured of yourself, knowing what your self-worth is, having a purpose. All of these things, which would be beneficial to men, you completely gloss over and put your feminist bullshit right over the top of it. It's ridiculous. So men and boys before that don't have the language for modes of expression that don't readily conform to traditional standards. To step outside of those norms is to take a risk most of us are afraid to take. As a result, a lot of guys spend their lives terrified. No. A lot of guys spend their lives depressed because the environment that we live in now favors feminine behaviors, which demonizes masculine behaviors. And any time that we step out of line of these dogmatic political correctness, we are ostracized, demonized, and threatened to extinction. And by extinction, I mean suicide. There's a reason why male suicide's higher than any other demographic. Has nothing to do with anything other than the bullshit that's been coming out of this right here. And the statement right there trying to say that we're terrified because our modes of expression don't readily conform to traditional standards is a nice way of putting it that masculine behavior is demonized. That's what that means. And so long as you demonize masculine behavior and offer no outlet, healthy outlet, to this behavior, it's going to get worse. But let's continue with your stupid ass tweets. We're terrified of being viewed as something other than men. We know ourselves to be a man, but we do not know how to be our whole selves. A lot of us, me included, either shut off or experience deep shame or rage, or all three. Again, men are terrified. Let me tell you what's happening inside of your little fucking brain when you're talking about you including shutting off your experience, feeling shame or rage. You are demonized for being a man. How many times should I repeat that in these tweets? The very concept of toxic masculinity is demonizing men for their masculinity. Tucker Carlson actually put it very eloquently to the psychotherapist. Is there such thing as a toxic femininity? Well, of course not. No, there isn't, because it's the model standard of behavior. Women can do what they want. Men have to conform. If men step out of a line of this conformity, women form a movement called Me Too or some other shit and pretty much ostracize you to the point of you'll never work again. You're screwed. Get out of Dodge. You're fired. Whatever. It's a horrible thing. Finally, even talking about this topic invites ridicule because it's so scary for most men and women. Men are adrift and nobody is talking about it and nobody's doing anything about it, and it's killing us. Well, you're half right. There's some people that are doing stuff about it, and it's not feminists. It's not people like you. There is the men's rights movement. Guess who shuts them down when they try to talk about men's issues and men's rights of suicide and trying to address the things that are problems for men? Feminists.
Are fucking scum. Fucking rape apologists, incest supporting, woman hating, fucking scum.
Is there someone else that can wait?
When you have a feminist rally outside of a men's rights rally just to call them all scum and evil misogynists and women haters and put all your fucking labels all over the top of everybody because you think it's appropriate to do so, and you wonder why men get pissed off. Yes, this upsets me a little bit, but I was already upset because I had to deal with something else that's fairly related to this that I'm going to do in a different video. I have a treat in store for you all in my next one. It's going to be fun. We raise our boys with an acceptance that violence will be a part of their behaviors. Boys will be boys, while teaching them to repress all the feelings except for anger. Boys don't cry. In a society which objectifies girls and women, she said. This is Melanie Angela Newley, a professor in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology, connected toxic masculinity to gun violence in a conversation with Huffington Post. Of course she did. She's a feminist in criminal justice. Pretty obvious that she is, if she can connect this shit, because she's using all the appropriate verbiage. While problematic in and of itself, patriarchy hurts men too. We see that abusers overwhelmingly come to abusive backgrounds and thus only replicate patterns they have learned during their childhood. Patterns which, while criminal, are ultimately reinforced in a number of ways in a masculine culture of violence. And there you have it. Let's demonize men some more because they're men, and also say that violence is a part of our behavior. And yeah, that's necessarily true. Men are violent toward other men. And sometimes women, when they decided to step up and kind of pick a fight, stab them. I used to think that it was okay it wasn't ever okay to hit a woman. Like, just don't do it, ever. That was until I got stabbed. That perception changed really quickly. If you have the gall to bring a weapon and decide to attack somebody else, man or woman, you deserve swift retribution. I have a zero tolerance policy for violence. You start something, you're going to end up being finished by it. Treat others as you would want to be treated. Don't start nothing, there won't be nothing. I like these quotes for a reason, because pretty much if you don't want to fight, don't start a fight. That's really what it comes down to. But to demonize men, which is this whole freaking article, to demonize men while simultaneously pointing to shit like the patriarchy and toxic masculinity as if it's the problem. No, the problem is that femininity is not the gold standard of behaviors. There's a lot of toxic behaviors in femininity. And yes, I plan on doing a video about that one too, because it's going to be also glorious to point out the flaws of women and have them hate themselves for it. Women are not perfect either. They just happen to not be violent. They do much more horrid things, and we'll get into that. That's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. It was kind of irritating that I saw this stupid toxic masculinity shit come up again. I invite you to see my other video called Toxic Masculinity, where I discuss it at length and went down the rabbit hole, the source of that particular term. And you'll understand if you watch that one why it's such a stupid freaking idea. It doesn't exist. It's a false claim. It's a term used to demonize men. Period. That's what it's for. So, thank you all for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.